All right, everyone, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Welcome to UFOs of North Bergen. Just a few things before we do get started with the presentation. Please keep your microphones muted during the presentation. That helps cut down on all the background noise. Also, please hold your questions until the end of the presentation. And when it's the time for questions, please type them in the chat box. So without further ado, I'd like to present our local town historian, Michael Maring.
Thank you, Chelsea, for that introduction. Thank you, everybody, for joining us tonight. And, hopefully we could have a little fun here. This is one of my favorite topics when it comes to town and when it comes to North Bergen. Just a forewarning, I'm not a big time believer in aliens, right? But I'm a tangible guy. I teach history. I've studied history my whole life. And I'm a seeing is believing guy. If I could touch it, if I could hold it, then I'm going to think it's real. But there's something about this that has always piqued my interest. There's something here that always made me feel that there might be a little more truth to this. So let's just jump right into this. So, at the start of 1975, the United States, the whole country, were captivated by this idea of the intergalactic travel, so to say, right? And Americans are across the country are enthralled with this possibility of a high speed trek through space. Now, the availability to visit another world, people are kind of, they're losing their minds over this idea. And what happens is something right out of the futurists' minds of people like H.G. Wells and Jules Verne, right? There's a sci-fi novel that comes to life, okay? And on January 15th, 1975, okay, Space Mountain in Disney opens, okay? Now, bear with me here, okay? Space Mountain opens on January 15th, okay? And before roller coaster fanatics line up for this out-of-the-world experience, North Bergen has something happen that nobody could kind of explain still to this day. And there's a lot of stories and evidence we're going to take a look at here that really can make a believer out of anybody. So let's just jump right into this. And this story is again, it's really starts to revolve around a major landmark in town. And the story really picks up once the Stonehenge apartment building is built. So if there's anybody in the Stonehenge apartment building right now, make sure you keep looking out the windows. All right, it might be something going on. But before the event, the North Bergen event, the O'Barski event, it's important we learn a little bit about the history of UFOs and North Bergen. See, the first encounter that we've come across or we saw was back in the 1940s, the late 1940s. There's a story from 48 that some residents in the Woodcliff section of town, they said they saw lights in the sky and that they saw something land near the lake. Now, again, it's 1948. We're just coming out of World War II, and people are a little skeptical to go into the park. And so there's nobody brave enough to go into Hudson County Park in 1948 to actually see what goes on. But we do know from the police blotters, from records, that the North Bergen police were called to investigate the park. We don't have the county police records from back then, which those would have been the first people on the scene. But they don't have any records that they were willing to give us or they knew of. But North Bergen has a record from 1948 of having to go investigate an incident in the park. It doesn't say what, it just says an incident. After 1948, North Bergen's a small town. I always tell people we're a big town, but we got a small town feel. And in the 50s and the 60s, there's claims and there's stories which we kind of attribute to kids just making up stories. But once the 1970s hits, something happens. We become the landing point for UFO sightings. Starting in 1971, a gentleman by the name of Robert Aguilar, He's a security guard for Penn Central Railroad, and he's working down on the waterfront down in Weehawken. And he says that he saw something odd in the night sky, and he looked north along the Hudson River, and he claimed that the object illuminated bright white lights. All right, and that the object seemed to hover and rotate in place, which he estimated was about 2 miles away. And from where Penn Central Railroad was located, 2 miles away from there is Hudson County Park. So Aguilar, kind of shocked by the sight, called another guy who was there. He just called this dude. He's like, hey, get over here, get over here. And this guy, Douglas Harrell, a truck driver, corroborates his story that they saw something flying 2 miles north above more or less Hudson County Park. Together, they watched it for several minutes. It kind of hovered around, and then all of a sudden, it was gone, just disappeared, right? So 1971, we have our first witnesses, right? It's not just one guy, it's 2 guys witnessing this. So we take it for what it's worth, right? 1972, an artist, Howard Averill, happens to be on Boulevard East. He's, according to him, he was doing a landscape of the skyline when all of a sudden he's on Riverview Drive, and he says he saw something fly across the park, right, heading towards the George Washington Bridge. Kind of stopped what he was doing. He watched it, and the object, he said, faded from this vibrant orange and then kind of turned to a darkening pink and then just disappeared into the night sky. So we have these people who are, I guess, you know, are setting the evidence for the really big one. Now, you know, most residents in North Bergen have some knowledge of the O'Barski event, right? George O'Barski sees this UFO and it's a big deal. It was on the History Channel, right? It's got all this allure around it. But what a lot of people don't know is that on January 11th, he's not the only person to see this thing. There's 2 other people, completely unrelated. These people have never met. UFO enthusiasts have been looking into this for years to find a connection, and there is no connection between these 3 groups of people. It is a family from West New York, it is George O'Barski, and it is a security guard at the Stonehenge apartment buildings. So there's 3 people who see the same exact thing. And I think that's what makes this even crazier, right? And what makes it believable that this actually happens. Now, again, the Walmsley family of West New York, okay, they see something 6 hours prior to George O'Barski seeing something. Now, again, I keep saying the O'Barski incident. It's also known as the Stonehenge incident. So, you know, we have some time frame here to put this. So at about 9 o'clock, it's Saturday night. The Walmsley families gathered around watching TV. You know, I looked up presumptuously. They're probably either watching a TV show called SWAT or the Mary Tyler Moore Show, right? Maybe they're watching Saturday Night at the Movies on NBC. Okay, these were the 3 top network shows in 1975. Whatever they were watching, the Walmsley residence is on 67th Street near Boulevard East. They are, again, just south of the Galaxy Towers. Now, Robert Walmsley, the youngest member of the family, he's the first one to see something, and he described a large circular object that kind of just hovered in place over River Road, over the Hudson River, excuse me. Now, Robert calls to his parents Joseph and Alice, and they too are just kind of all in awe of what they're witnessing. And Robert's siblings, right, Joseph Jr. and a sister, Debbie, right? So now we're up to 5 people in one household seeing something. They're all staring at this thing, and they collectively describe what they saw as this flat bottom object with circling lights. It's got a domed top, and it's displaying multicolored lights. They also claim to hear a humming that's coming from this aircraft, and the object is visible for several minutes, and they said they watched it head north along Boulevard East. Now, Alice Walmsley, right, the mother, she said it seemed as if the vessel was purposely moving slow, almost kind of looking around, spying into homes on Boulevard East. Specifically some of the high rises. She said it looked to slow down as it got by some buildings. Specifically, she said it slowed down when it got by the Galaxy, when it got by a couple of the buildings a little north. Now, this story definitely adds validity to George O'Barski, because O'Barski is going to see this thing at about 2 o'clock in the morning on his way home, right? So here we are on Saturday, January 11th, 9 o'clock at night. George O'Barski, he's driving home now, 2 o'clock in the morning on January 12th. And the weird thing is that the weather is mild. And I don't know if this plays into the story, but O'Barski is driving through Hudson County Park, 2 o'clock in the morning, January 12th, with his windows down, right? I mean, normally January 12th, you're driving around with your windows closed, but he claims the weather was really nice, so he was driving with the windows open, getting a little fresh air. So he makes his way through the park, right, through the traffic circle. He's making his way to a diner in Fort Lee. Now, this is when he starts to experience, his experience with the UFO begins. Now, he's driving, driver's side window is open, and as he makes his way through the stop sign at the traffic circle, he notices that some static starts coming over his radio. And as he's driving towards Boulevard East, there's more and more static overcoming the radio. But the static doesn't catch his attention. He says there's this another noise. He described it as a droning sound, like a refrigerator. He described it, and it was just then, and that as he's driving, he looks to his left, and he's about where those baseball fields are today, right? We're kind of just around where the James Braddock statue is, across from the tennis courts. He looks to his left and he says he sees something that forces him to just stop his car. And he just stops in the middle of Hudson County Park. As he's stopping there, he's looking and he's flabbergasted, right? I'll use his own words. He was interviewed by some investigators. He said, I would say that the thing was 30 feet across. It was big, maybe 6 feet high, and it looked like a blown up pancake. And the thing landed right ahead of me. So he says he sees this UFO land right in the park. Now, O'Barski said he witnessed several entities exit the spaceship. He said they were dressed in white, and he described them looking like small kids in snowsuits. And he claimed that these entities kind of held something in their hand. He said it was an instrument of something he couldn't really see, but he knows that they stuck it into the ground. He said he could see them jam it into the ground. He went on to explain that they looked to be prodding the ground several times. And then that's it. They packed up and disappeared just as fast as they arrived. And now O'Barski he said it like he felt like he was there for hours watching it, but only about a minute passed. And O'Barski's experience, again, his car rolled down the hill. He didn't really stop. He thought he was stopped, but he apparently almost rolled right into Boulevard East. He's shaken by the event, and he recalls the night and explains his thoughts. He says, I was scared to death. He goes, I was sweating. He goes, I got home, I made some tea, I took 2 aspirins. He goes, I was scared. And he said, either I'm going crazy or there's something awfully wrong with me. So O'Barski, even to himself, doesn't think what he saw was real. He thinks he's going nuts. Now, again, while this is all going on, there's a doorman named Bill Pawlowski at the Stonehenge apartment buildings. And he's on duty, right? He's got the overnight shift. And he's sitting at the concierge desk, and he said this bright light in the park just catches his eye. And again, he said at the same time the light catches his eye, the window in the lobby cracks. Now, Pawlowski believed the window was damaged by vandals, and he calls the police. Upon their investigation, he didn't tell them about the lights. I think Pawlowski might have been afraid that the police would have thought he was nuts, or, you know, they wouldn't have taken him serious that somebody vandalized the building. But he didn't tell him that, you know, he saw this light. The next day when Pawlowski's shift is over, though, he goes across the street and he sees that there's this tree. The tree's not there anymore, right? But he says the tree is there, it's damaged. And when he went into work the night before, the tree wasn't damaged. So now we have three people or three groups that are seeing something, all kind of corroborating, right? The Walmsleys are saying this thing is humming and droning, right? O'Barski is saying that it sounds like a refrigerator hum. All three of them are describing a brightness to this thing. So, I mean, you know, there's some validity to this story, right? You know, it's hard for three people to make up three stories and that just happen to all match at the same time, right? It seems impossible. Now, listen, the O'Barski incident, that's the most well-known UFO sighting in the park. But there are more, all right, that we should know. And roughly a year after the O'Barski, the Stonehenge, the Walmsley incident, whatever you want to call it, in 1976, three people, again, completely unrelated, see something in the park, right? Again, almost a year to the day. Now we're talking January 29th, 1976. Three more people that are completely unrelated see something similar going on. Dr. Ann Carr, a Manhattanite, lives over on 23rd Street, 9th Avenue in New York City, reports seeing this lighted, top-shaped hovering ship hovering over the Hudson River. She says near Weehawken at about 4 p.m. Now, there's a story that then gets told by a 7-year-old boy who was in the park the same day. The youngster claimed that he had seen a UFO land on spindly legs near the lake in the park. And he said that was about 4:15. The boy ran home terrified, told his parents. And naturally, the parents didn't believe him, right? But it was his conviction in the story and later news of sightings that made them contact the police. So, you know, here we have 4 o'clock. Somebody says they see something over Weehawken. 4:15, we have a boy in the park says, no, man, something landed here. So we see something land here. And again, a Stonehenge doorman by the name of Francisco Gonzalez. He's the last witness. Gonzalez says it was it was square with windows. He says, I was really shocked. He says, I was standing in the door without opening it, and I saw this thing very clear. He says, I saw the bottom of the object. Now, Gonzalez will continue. He says it's circular. It had windows around the perimeter. It had a flat bottom. It was brightly illuminated. Again, this is almost exactly what O'Barski says he saw. This is exactly what the Walmsley people are saying they saw. After a minute or so, Gonzalez, he goes outside and he's standing in the driveway and he says, I want to get a better look. He said, when I opened the door, I heard a sound and he was shocked. He said the sound was unlike any conventional aircraft, and he compared it to a buzzing or a humming, right, of a bee. And he said it was going straight into your ear and creating this vibrating sensation. And he said it was a heavy sound. He said that he thought it was going to like wake up people in the building. He said it sounded like it was going to wake everybody up. He was afraid that the building was going to be damaged. And then after several minutes, he said the object began to ascend slowly, straight up. And he said, not like a helicopter. He goes, it didn't wobble kind of around like a helicopter. He said the thing just went straight up in the air, just straight up. Disturbed by what he saw and heard, he went back into the lobby and he tried to call another security guard. In the meantime, the object is rising, right out of the doorman's line of vision. And when he reached security, the security guard, Alberto Perez, didn't take him serious, right? Now, look, again, these are people that are all within vicinity of the park, right? These are all very closely related, right? And You know, it's not until 1976 that the chief of police, a guy by the name of George Lehman, he has to make a comment on this now, right? Because people in town are freaking out, right? People in North Bergen are like, what is happening up in the park? You know, you got people going in there and you know, in typical North Bergen fashion, right? George Lehman, the chief of police, says this. He says, look, if the aliens, if they clear immigrations and customs and have a green card, we'll welcome them as tourists to our community, right? I mean, listen, you can't get a more North Bergen answer than that. The Jersey Journal polls local North Bergen residents, and it seems that many believe that there are little green men roaming around Hudson County Park. However, one young resident did offer his thoughts on the sightings. He said, sure, there are people right here, and it only seems logical that these beings study us from close up, like when we study primitive societies in South America and Africa, right? That's some great insight from a young kid to kind of have that perspective. Now, it gets quiet from like 76 to like 79, really nothing goes on. We don't have any big, you know, reports. But in 1979, we have the Stith incident. And what happens is this gentleman named Harold Stith, he's driving through the park, right? And he's near, you know, where the Braddock statue is today, where O'Barski saw, you know, the UFO. Now, the story is retold by his son, Robert. And Robert did an interview in 2007. He says, my father is driving home from work. He's driving on Boulevard East. He turns into Braddock Park. He said, and the car just turned off. Car just stopped. He said, the radio went dead. He said, a bright light came over the top of the car. And then my father heard these strange things on the radio. He said there was a language he didn't understand. He then noticed it was some sort of spaceship kind of above his car. He said the doors of the ship opened and little gray men got out with big eyes. He said the next thing his father knew was that the door shut and the spaceship flew off. And he said it was probably about 10 minutes, right? He said, I was probably sitting there for about 10 minutes. But as it turned out, Stith sat there for 3 hours, right? He was just stuck in the park for 3 hours. And he said that, you know, his mother would say that, you know, father came home 3 hours late from work. So you have this event again, right? You know, who knows if Stith, you know, really was there for 3 hours. There are some people who will say that Stith might have been abducted, right? And that's why he thinks it was only 10 minutes. We're not really sure. To make this encounter even stranger, right? Bud Hopkins, who is he was kind of like the UFO expert. He's going to say that, you know, look, he believes that Stith is abducted, right? And well thought, and again, we all thought he was crazy, right? He didn't want the story to come out because he was afraid people thought he was nuts, right? That's why his son comes out after his death and tells the story. 2 days after Stith had this close encounter, he told his family he had a dream, and this is some crazy stuff here. He says he has a dream about the Miss America pageant. And listen, I'm a red-blooded American man. I often dream about the Miss America pageant too, right? But Harold Stith named the winner, what she wore, what she performed, and where she was from. Okay, now listen, I've gotten lucky before with guessing things in the future, but it's been like, who rang the doorbell, right? He names all 4 of these things. And again, Robert Stith says no one took him serious, right? He had no affiliation with the pageant, right? He had no idea why he would even pick this person. But surely enough, Harold Stith prediction came true. 2 weeks later, Stith predicted that Cheryl Pruitt of Mississippi would win Miss America 1980. And everything he predicted came true during that pageant. Now, again, was Harold Stith given or taken somewhere into the future and he was able to see this? Was this just pure luck? Is this family lore that has gotten out of control? You know, we don't really know, but it is another layer to this story. Now, the last real major report of anybody seeing anything in the park comes from 1986, in July of 1986. Ron Lee and Nanette Nappy. Okay, they are taking in the sights from Nanette Nappy's balcony in the apartment, in the Stonehenge apartments. And they noticed this large but silent stationary object over the park. And they claim that the UFO just kind of sat there and suddenly started heading south. And Nappy, you know, she sketched it. She's an artist. She sketches it, which the sketch is available on our website, which, you know, I'll put in the chat. You guys can take a look at it. But since 1986, you know, we've had several sightings in or near Hudson County Park. Most recently was 2016. There were some reports of lights in the sky, a disc-shaped object kind of spinning triangles. We've had lights making erratic movements in the sky, mysterious beams of light, aircraft turning in unexplained ways, all these different things. Lights in circle patterns over the park, right? Along with these unexplained scorch marks and sporadic holes in the fields in Hudson County Park. Again, some people will report those. There's also the one time a person reported that an old flagpole went missing. So, I mean, again, we don't know. We really don't know with all this. Now, again, look, to be honest with you, at the start, when I started researching these things, and I even told you, I'm a bit of a skeptic, right? I don't know about these things, right? But, you know, as I research, right, and this stuff seems to be connected, right? And they're looking at these sightings and you're seeing similarities being reported by people completely unrelated and unknown to each other. And over time, right, it leaves me with more of a want to know if it's true, right? Did aliens really land in North Bergen, right? And if so, why are they landing in North Bergen, right? Why are they landing here? You know, I feel the words of Rekha Sharma best fit best sum up my newfound feelings on this subject. They said, I believe there are some forms of intelligence in the universe. I've seen and I've heard some pretty convincing UFO stuff. Besides, if it were the most intelligent things in the universe, if we're the most intelligent things in the universe, excuse me, that's pretty depressing. All right, now listen, again, I'd like to thank you guys for joining me. I'm here for any questions. You could fire them away at me. I will try to answer them to the best of my ability. Again, here is a link to our website where we have everything and we have all the UFO sighting listings along with a ton of other great information about North Bergen and its history. So again, guys, thank you for coming. I appreciate it. If you're outside tonight, taking the dog for a walk or just taking a stroll, maybe go into the park and look up and see if anything's going on. All right, let me know. Let me know if you guys see anything. But again, I'm here for any questions. I'll hang out for a little bit and see what you guys got for me. If not, have a great night and thank you for coming by.
Yes, thank you everyone for coming to participate, and thank you, Michael, for a fantastic presentation. If anyone has any questions, please go ahead and type them in the chat box.
Okay, so one, right, the last UFO reported in North Bergen that we have is, take it for what it's worth, it's April 20th, 2016. So, I mean, there's some people who do partake in some recreational stuff on 420, so that might have, you know, led to this. But there was a report that an object flying straight upwards with flashing lights, they said it flashed about 3 times and disappeared as it went upwards. So you got that going on. Last known one was 2016. I think the library, Chelsea, I think you guys will post the video of this eventually on the library website.
Yes, on the library's YouTube channel.
All right, so Jeff, it'll be on the library's YouTube channel. Sharon, great question, right? Has the government ever given any explanations to this? Now, in the process of our research, we came across a lot of stories about people claiming to see things on the Hudson River in the late 70s, early 80s. And you know, it got so bad where the federal government did have to say something. And their explanation, you know, listen, and to me, it makes sense. It sounds plausible. It sounds believable. And what they said was they were testing stealth technology along the river. And they said they were doing it because they were located, well, the Hudson's located between three major airports, right? It's located between Newark, LaGuardia, and JFK. And they said if these airplanes or whatever they were testing could make it without being detected by three airports, then they knew to keep, you know, developing the technology. So, I mean, that was the explanation that was given by at least the Air Force in the 70s and 80s. You know, take it for what it's worth. Maybe they were trying to quell some, you know, some nerves, or maybe they were being honest. Maybe they said, right? Juan, you're asking my opinion, why North Bergen? And you know, listen, again, I think, you know, we take for granted in North Bergen. I think we take for granted places like North Hudson County Park and the openness of it. And take a look at a map, right? Google North Bergen, right? Take a look at Google Earth and look at our town and look at, you know, the rest of the areas, West New York and Union City and so on and so forth, right? North Bergen has the most open space in the entire county, right? And that's counting Hudson County Park, that's counting ball fields, that's counting the cemeteries. So if I had to speculate why people, or why aliens or UFOs or whatever it is landing here, I think it's because we have large areas that are still open to land. If you look at the rest of the county, there's not a lot of open spaces to land, right? There's not a lot of places where you can just drop in undetected, so to say. That would be my speculation. And then Ruth, sorry, I saw your question here. What was on the land of the Stonehenge? It was a restaurant. I believe it was called the Wagon Wheel. What was there? There was a hotel there before that. So I don't think there's anything special about the area. I think, you know, the construction of the Stonehenge is unique in being that it's round. But the Stonehenge, even in the early days of the construction, it wasn't supposed to be called the Stonehenge. And, you know, there was a lot of issues with the finances of it, and all. The Stonehenge almost didn't happen. The building almost didn't happen, to be honest with you. So, you know, I don't think it has anything to do with the location or the building itself. I think you know, it might have to do with the park. I really don't know. Lewis, I see, heard the day after the O'Barski incident, FBI was in North Bergen. Yeah, that's actually true. FBI was there. According to several people that we spoke to, after a couple of times, the FBI was in Hudson County Park after suspected UFO sightings. We did talk to somebody, and they swore that Channel 11 News was there, and Channel 11 had footage of the park. And the person said, I remember because I cut school. I cut school to go to the park because everybody's talking about it. I reached out to Channel 11 multiple times, and they basically said, we don't have any of that digitized, and there's no, you know, it's going to take forever to find it. So, I mean, there's footage probably somewhere. Some news archive probably has the footage of people in North Bergen reporting on it, but, you know, we can't really view the film evidence to put the pieces together on that one. All right. Well, I guess if there's no more questions, that kind of does it for us. Again, thanks for coming, everyone. Next month, we got a ton of stuff scheduled for the next couple of months. You know, we have we're putting together the capstone for our North Bergen Stories event. And then even further down the road, we have undertaken the impossible. We have looked up the history and origin of every street name in North Bergen. It's driven us insane over here, trying to find this information out. We hope you kind of jump in and, you know, if you live in town or lived in town We hope you come back, ask us about a street, and we'll try to tell you as much as we can know about it and pass it along. But again, thank you guys. I appreciate everybody for coming in. Like I said, that'll probably be sometime February, March. That event will be in February. We'll be doing our North Bergen Stories wrap up. So, you know, we try to do something every month, guys. Try to do something every month. And, you know, we hope you come back every time, guys. All right. Have a great night. And again, go out in the park if you're close and go stand up and look in the sky and see if you see anything. All right.
Thank you everyone so much for coming. And once again, thank you so much, Michael.
Oh, anytime, guys. Again, thank you so much. I appreciate you coming by.
Have a good night, everyone.
Good night, guys.